Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hope you guys are all doing well, inshallah. As you guys are trickling in, we have some refreshments that are put out now. You can go ahead and grab some refreshments. We also have, for those of the kids who would like to, we have babysitting upstairs. Down the hall, the first classroom on the school side. We have a sister who's there who's going to be taking care of the babysitting and have activities for the kids, inshallah. So again, babysitting is upstairs, down the hall, on the first classroom, on the school side on your left, inshallah. And we'll start in a few minutes, inshallah. Jazakallah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Inshallah, we're going to get started, and if we can ask the brothers and sisters to start sitting down again, there's refreshments, some water, if you want to grab some before we get started. The session is live streamed on our YouTube page, and so if you have family members, friends who couldn't make it, you can go ahead and please share that link with them. It's the Islamic Foundation YouTube page, inshallah. I also want to request if we can, at the very beginning of the program, try to fill in the chairs in the front. We, as usual, have folks that will start trickling in during the program, and we want to make sure that it's not inconvenient for them to start filling in the seats in the back, inshallah. So if we can start filling in the seats in the front, and inshallah accommodate for those who will be coming in later, that'd be greatly appreciated. You guys, however you guys want to sit, inshallah, you can sit there. All right. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya'i wal mursaleen. Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. Amma ba'd. I want to start off by welcoming all of you, brothers and sisters, young and old, parents, and those of you who are not parents yet, or those of you who are grandparents. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you all. And the kids who are here. Inshallah, this is a session that maybe you can participate in and help your parents out with parenting, inshallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us all to benefit from this gathering. May this gathering a session of forgiveness and elevation for all of us, and that we leave this room, we leave this session having drawn closer to Allah, having drawn closer to our family and our loved ones. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. We're honored to host two giants of our community. One who's a physical giant, the other one not so much, alhamdulillah, my brother Jawad. But we have Brother Habeeb Quadri and Dr. Jawad Pervez. Brother Habeeb is one of the OGs of Chicago. We were just talking about how he was the role model for many young brothers and sisters in the community, and how his character, how his grit and hard work has been an example and a model for so many of us, from being the principal of the MEC schools to becoming the superintendent, by being recognized on a national level for his work and his effort, being involved in so many different organizations and being involved in so many different types of work, continuing to help students grow and thrive. We are honored that he is with us. Yeah, Brother Habeeb is also an author. Along with being an educator, he taught. He now is part of the administration of a school, and he's also an author. He wrote maybe more than a couple of books. I know two of them. Did you write more than two? but one of the books that our dear brother wrote is on parenting. Another book that he wrote is the War Within Our Hearts, which is a book that he co-authored with his cousin Shaykh Quadri. Both amazing books, and he brings in a lot of experience in dealing with children as an educator, but also as a parent and also as a community leader. Understanding the challenges as a young man growing up in America of what he experienced and what he sees children today and youth today experiencing as well. We're also honored to have a dear friend and also a community member, Dr. Jawad Pervez, who is from the Chicago community. MashaAllah, he's a Glendale Heights kid who grew up, actually Glen Ellen. Glen Ellen, don't forget your Glen Ellen roots, brother. Back in the day, Siri Drive, yeah, there you go. All right. Everyone knows Siri Drive, MashaAllah. So Dr. Jawad, MashaAllah, completed his medical school studies at here Midwestern University. He went on to pursue his residency in psychiatry at Loyola, and he's been practicing in Kenosha, Wisconsin for the last 10 years, mashallah, I believe. No, it's 2015, mashallah. He also has a specialization in women's mental health. Mashallah, he spent time not only as a professional and trying to help community, but as a community member giving back to his own community, working with scholars, working with imams, working with community leaders and masjids, giving regular presentations on the challenges of mental health and the pressures that youth and adults are experiencing in their life. And so we're honored to have him here on the panel as well. I'm honored to call them both, leaders and also friends. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless both of them. So the format of tonight's program is similar to our previous family night, which was a discussion. We're going to have a conversation. I'll ask some questions. We'll have some back and forth. But we also want, towards the end of the session, to have an opportunity for all of you to ask your questions, to engage. But to be able to accommodate that in an efficient way, we have these QR codes that are up on the TV. You can go ahead and scan those QR codes and submit your questions as the talk is going on so that we can sift through those questions and get through as many as possible before the end of the session, inshallah. Isha is usually at 8 p.m. We've delayed it till 8:30 today, just to accommodate not only the conversation and talk, but also the Q&A and have time to have some back and forth, inshallah. So let's get started. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I want to start with Brother Habeeb. Right? We talk about parenting. We talk about family. I've been trying to discuss this often in my khutbahs and my talks in regards to the crisis that we're experiencing, the family crisis that we see in our community, whether it's marriages or it's with children and parenting, the struggles that we have, etc. We see these stats and these numbers. They're mind-blowing. They're sad. We're struggling with it. That may have led you to write this book on parenting. And with your experience, I guess, what did you see with this experience of writing this book? What pushed you to writing the book itself? and what are some of the some lessons that you learned yourself as an author as you were doing research and as you were putting these things together. I wanted to start off there to see, and maybe for you to share some of that, those experiences as an author, as someone putting together a book on parenting itself.
First and foremost, and one of the book was called Parenting, Who Said It Was Easy? So that was the title of the book. And the part I wanted to have, I grew up here, my father came in 1960, so growing up here, there were situations that we all go through, and then having your own kids, I have 3 kids, you know that there are going to be challenges. And so one of the first things I always, when we talk to a lot of parents like, I can't believe, look, I don't know, in this society, the Western society, and now our kids are being this way. And I always try to remind everyone that first and foremost, we need to kind of step back. If we want to look at it, one of the first things that we have to understand is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds us with the people He loved the most, which were the prophets. So this is like, I just want to baseline before we get into anything today, is to understand that Allah loved the prophets the most, and Allah tested some of the prophets with their children, as Surah Allah reminds us in Surah Anfal, that our progeny will be a test. So you have Adam alayhi salam, one brother jealous of another to a point, I'm going to kill him, and kills him. You have another situation where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells a prophet, oh son, come to the deen. Doesn't just send him to maybe Sunday school for a few years. Doesn't send him to like a full-time school. He goes for not 5 years educating him, 10 years, not even 100 years, not even 200 years. The old scholars say that the great Noah's son was about 300 years old when the great flood happened. So he was trying to do tarbiyah, and even makes dua until Allah says stop making dua for him. Even when he goes to the top of the mountain, Father, I'll be fine. So what we learn from here is you never lose hope in your kids, right? Never lose hope in your kids. I don't care what they did, what they have done. Never lose hope, because what we want to do is figure out the situation. We're going to talk about this later, having this open communication. I guarantee you, Jawad will give you a lot why that's so important. So that's number 2. Number 3, Allah then gives us another example. A lot of times when we talk about why we wrote this book, because people like this, our first chapter of the book is called the Mashallah child. Everyone thinks that, oh, Mashallah, my Habiti, my Laddu, my Kadu, whatever you guys want to call him, my Chan Katukara, everything. We have all these little things, right? And it happens, right? Not my child. And why is this important? Because a lot of times we have individuals who go, Brother Khadi, when I deal with this at school, our community, for Muslim youth in North America, we deal with issues and said, brother, I know when I'm going to say this, but really, I don't know if it's my child, because our family's, mashallah, it's that child. I don't want to say, but I'm going to say, right? Everyone thinks it's the other child. And I always want to remind us that when we're so blinded with our own child that they can't do anything wrong, that's when problems happen. The best thing my father ever did is never trusted me. It was the best thing for me. And I'll give you more stories when we get to that. I don't want to, I want to start talking for 50 minutes. But remind me about that. I'll tell you. So now, what's the part here, Prophet? I give you an example, and remind all of us. And this is a good reminder. So that in that book we kind of talk about the Mashallah challenge. So what we can learn. Allah reminds us from His beautiful prophets that if we think that our kids, our family, are no way, there's no possible we come from this. So even when we deal with the schools, like I can't believe this child from this khandan did this. Astaghfirullah. I'm like, relax. You're telling me that we're going to say astaghfirullah to a prophet whose grandfather was a prophet, his father was a prophet, and he himself was a prophet, and the brothers wanted to maybe kill him, throw him in the well and see what happens, which is Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam. So why I bring this up is that when we want to talk about this, it's okay. We're all there. I have my own 3 kids, and each one you have to deal with separately. I'm like, I can't believe it, because for me now, I'm the Baba, so it's a different thing. Easier for me to talk to someone else's. I think it'd be easier for you to talk to someone else's kid than your own kid, because now it's like, blah, blah. Right? It's just like your own wife, spouse, right? Like someone else tells the same thing, like, that's a great idea. I said the same thing. No, you did. You said it the wrong way, right? And then the 4th reminder for us is that the child is trying to practice the deen, and they, around their house, their family, they're not practicing the deen, which is Ibrahim alayhi salam. So I wanted to kind of get that base. So one of the reasons we wrote this is that when I've seen challenges, working at schools, working with the youth groups, working in the communities, and having our own kids, that I wanted us to realize we're not the only one, right? When we wrote the book, War Within the Hearts, the same reason. I had a lot of questions. Why is that? It's haram. Well, I want to know why it's haram. You're asking too many questions. That's asking too many questions haram. I'm like, man, I want to know. Because if not, especially now than ever before, if you don't want to get answers, you're going to go to Shaykh Google. And Shaykh Google is going to give you all the answers the way you like it. Pick and choose. And that's why one of these kind of foundations of having these, of parenting, is that these challenges are not to just happen now. Yes, it's a little bit different ball game, different challenges, different things, a lot more opportunities to do wrong than back then, but at the same time, that same concept.
Yeah, and I just want to add one thing that Habeeb was saying. I mean, we're all going to come here, this is positive parenting, right? So one of the fears I have when we have a seminar like this, and I've done a few as well, and it's like, I don't want anyone walking out of here, especially the parents, thinking, oh, OMG, like, I'm the worst parent here, right? Or I've made this mistake, or I've made that mistake. And the issue here is that none of us are going to be perfect parents, right? We've all made mistakes. Myself, I've made mistakes. Noman is making mistakes, right? Habeeb is making mistakes. But we're all going to make mistakes. And there's this concept in psychology, that in the literature, that to be the good enough parent, you don't have to be the perfect parent, right? You have to be good enough. And if we follow the example of the Sunnah, and mashallah, Habeeb gave us example of the Anbiya and how they approach their children, that if we follow those examples of very simple, basic tenets, that we will be, insha'Allah, good enough, right? And when we doubt, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows us to be good enough to meet that threshold so that our children can thrive, inshallah.
MashaAllah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, they refer to our children as an amana. They're a trust. And that means, when we're entrusted with something, it is absolutely important and necessary for us to make sure that we are not breaching or creating a sense of mistrust with the person or the being that has given us that amana. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed us with our children, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will call our children back, will call us back at one point. And the real question is, how do we spend this time with the amana that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us and do our best? We were talking about the prophets, we were talking about their children. They were the best of human beings. They did the best effort that they could, but the results are never in our hand. And that's the first thing that as parents we have to understand, that results are never in our hand. Actually, even when it comes to inviting people to Islam, the prophetic tradition or the prophetic invitation, the results were not in the hand of the Prophet ﷺ. He was asked to just do the job. So Nuh did it for 950 years, but he only had a handful of people, because the results are never something that we are judged by in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's the effort and the sacrifice and the time that we put in that we are judged by in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so, Jazakallah khairan, Brother Habeeb, and for Jawad for starting off with that.
I'm still not sure about.
Let me give her 2 cents too now and then. The title of this conversation is trying to understand the challenges our children face today. The challenges I faced when I was growing up are very different than the challenges my kids are seeing today. And that's the first step of trying to find a solution to the challenge of parenting, is to admit that we have different challenges, that my child is not me, and I'm not my child. I had my own set of challenges, they have their own set of challenges. We live in a very different time, as Brother Habeeb was saying, that we can't, however, go on and blame society and blame community and blame sort of the environment that we're living in, because every era, every environment was problematic, had issues. It's a reality. Every environment had problems. You had in the community of the Prophet ﷺ, there were issues. That was far from a perfect community. They had issues. These issues were because they lived in a majority non-Muslim community. They were a minority in Mecca. Even in Medina, you had so many people accepting Islam, so many new Muslims, and this number of new Muslims continued to grow. Different perspectives, different challenges, all of these things were experienced. So no era, no generation was perfect, and every generation is going to have its set of challenges. And so how do we as parents understand that our children have a unique set of challenges that we may have never even heard of or experienced in our own lives. How do I better equip myself? How do I understand that? And how do I better equip myself with tools to help them overcome, inshallah? And so I wanted to direct this to Dr. Jawad to get this conversation started. Is, a lot of us, we see an increase in different challenges, namely mental health. And this is a rising problem in our community. However, a lot of us, we turn to therapists, we turn to counselors, we turn to the imam, and we're seeking help, right? We're trying to find resources to seek help. What are the problems or the pressures that you are seeing as a psychiatrist that are leading adults and kids to not only therapists but also having to then move to seeing a psychiatrist like yourself because of those pressures and because of those challenges?
Yeah, so again, caveat, right? So we're going to talk about things that our kids are dealing with. We're going to talk about the challenges they're facing. And again, I'm not trying to paint out like this doomsday scenario, but we are in the setting in which we need to know, right? Look, the more we know what our kids are going through, the more we're going to be able to be equipped to be able to help them, right? So when I list off these things, I don't want you guys to say, Allah, ho gaya bas, that's it. We're moving back to Pakistan, right? Like, that's it, we can't deal with this anymore. No, like, I'm just saying this because this is the setting, right? We're here to talk about the pressures that kids deal with. Now, Noman mentioned, okay, this is a different era, right? Namely with social media and the proliferation of technology, our kids, I have 3 kids too, I'm gonna deal with different challenges with my kids than my parents dealt with when I was growing up in the 80s and 90s, right? So we're not just talking about the regular pressures. I'm gonna talk about some of the unique things. So yes, social media proliferation since 2006. That is a unique pressure that these kids are trying to tackle, right? They're trying to figure out, where is my place in this world of social media? How involved am I, right? How much am I gonna participate in it? We talk about cultural expectations and pop culture. Pop culture and social media almost become analogous, and they kind of work hand in hand. So yes, in the 90s, I was dealing with 3 or 4, 7 TV channels, right? Now these kids, the net streaming platforms, there's 15 different platforms. And there's thousands of hours of content. I didn't have to contend with that in the 90s. I tell you, I had Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, that's all I was. That's it. And that's on Saturday morning too. I have to wait 6 days in, 23 and a half hours for the next episode, right? Now, what happens? You watch one episode, you don't have to do anything. It's passive. Netflix, man, these guys are like smart, right? The next episode starts, you have to press a button, right? So it's a different environment. It's like this immediate gratification environment that kids are growing up in. So let's talk about the things that we all grew up with, including myself and our kids. Academic pressure, peer pressure, the pressure to form your identity. Like, who am I, right? How do I define myself as a Muslim in this society, right? Hormonal changes and the vulnerabilities that come from that. Concerns about your appearance, right? Especially in the social media environment today, where we are hyper-focused on our appearance, and everyone that has kids knows that they're contending with a different monster, right? When I was growing up in the 90s, again, 5 TV channels, 1 TV. Now we have 9 TVs in the house because there's 3 phones and 4 iPads and a TV, right? So everywhere there's images, and so you're contending with, how do I look as a female or a male, right? The rise of body dysmorphia is a disorder in which you fixate on your appearance is rising, right? We have religious obligations. Everyone's kid's going to be a hafiz. Mera beta hafiz doctor banega, right? Hafiz doctor and engineer maybe. Like, man, subhanAllah. Like, growing up, like, it was a big deal for like 3 to 4 hours in the entire Lombard area, right? Now everyone's kid's a hafiz. So now you think, well, my kid should be hafiz too. Actually, my kid should be double hafiz. He should be Qadri too, and you should know the 10 modes of recitation, like Qadri Noman, mashallah. Right? So then we have pop culture, we talked about that. Discrimination and bigotry. Alhamdulillah, since 9/11, I would say, but Habeeb can maybe correct me on this, I feel like that is getting better, right? In the 2003, 2004, 2005, we're contending with a different animal. I think bigotry towards Muslims and the understanding of racism and discrimination has gotten better. We have gun violence, which is a real phenomenon. Habeeb can obviously speak to that more than I can. And then there's obviously substance abuse and the pressure of trying to avoid that as a child, as an adolescent, as a teenager, right? I will argue that substance abuse proliferation is also at a place that we've never seen it, right? Synthetic marijuana, not just regular marijuana. Back in the day, we dealt with regular marijuana, okay? Now we got the real deal stuff, right? And these kids have to figure out, am I going to be, am I going to be in that environment where I get exposed to opioids or pills, right? We'll talk about that if we have time. Last but not least, the other pressure I think we're dealing with, and I think Noman alluded to this, is the family unit, right? How tight is our family unit? And the struggles between a husband and a wife, they leak onto the children, and we are seeing divorce rates rising in the Muslim community. So a child has to deal with what's going on, the pressures in the home. So I spoke too much already. Half of you are sleeping now, maybe, but I'll let Habeeb jump in.
That was a lot, man. There was a lot of information packed into the 2 minutes of what.
Again, not trying to scare everybody, right?
So the goal, again, all right. So the goal is, this is, again, like Dr. Jawad mentioned, it is not a session to talk about how bad things are, okay? But it's a conversation to understand our reality. Our reality doesn't have to be good or bad. Our reality is what we make of it. All right, we can use the resources we have, the sort of the environment that we're in, and we can use that to do amazing things as well. Like it is what we make of the environment that we live in. And so yes, it's not a gloom and doom, and we're all going to end up losing our children. May God protect us, along with some of those pressures. I think even the pressure of faith, of being Muslim, an identity of not understanding what my tradition says and not wanting to believe. And that becomes another social pressure on these children, which is like, I don't identify as Muslim internally, but, well, I have to because my parents are Muslim, and if I say that I'm not Muslim, then it's another issue that I have to deal with. And they're struggling with their faith, they're struggling with their iman, they're struggling with their identity. And so in the face of all of that, like, what is our role, and how do we help navigate those challenges? Now, Brother Habeeb, Dr. Jawad, he went off and said a lot there, and he talked about the different pressures, and you come with the experience of being an educator, but now an administrator in a school setting and a Muslim school setting. Now, in that setting, as you deal with students every day, whether it be social media or the mental health issues that our children are facing, or even substance abuse, what do you see now becoming more of the challenge among students, the pressure or the challenges that they are facing at a school level? And what are some, I guess, I want to start moving towards also a solution-based type of discussion where we're, talking about the challenges, but then also like trying to, pop in some of those solutions as we discuss these different points, inshallah.
Inshallah. So what I want to just do is take what Dr. Jawad just said, and so I'm going to first step back here and saying, all right, what is important? How do kids take information? How do they retain information? And I'm just going to connect that with the issues that we have. So William Glasser is a Harvard psychologist, and he talks about how individuals retain information, right? Knowledge. So now, why is this important? Because it's going to play a big part in parenting. So 10% is what they read. If you give someone something to read and just read it on their own, they might retain it. And again, if you're the mashallah linguistic learners, but even a linguistic learner, would you trust a doctor to do surgery on you if you just said, I read all the books, I'm good to go? It won't be there, right? So 10% is what they read. 30% is what they see, 20% what they hear, but I'm going to skip right down to the 50% is what they see and hear. What they see and hear is how people retain information, right? So now, in parenting, what you are saying, what you are doing, it's going to be in one of the ways that they're going to observe, and then inculcate that in their lives, or take away, or subtract and add, whatever. It depends how they perceive something. And now let's go back to our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. And the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the best of example. Everything he said, he did. So you know that they would hear or they would see the Prophet do something. So this idea of seeing and hearing plays a big part. So now when we talk about these issues in a few minutes, it is so important from what their friends, what are they seeing and hearing? What are they seeing and hearing at home? Now you could take that from an academic standpoint, religious standpoint, how you deal with social standpoint, even physical. When we talk about kids who are out of shape, you'll say, hey, is at the house, is this important? So we're going to get into solution-based. But I wanted to bring that 50%. 70% of how people retain information is through discussion. Even a Prophet ﷺ, many times he would ask, a question, and the Sahabas would stay quiet, and they say, Allah and His Messenger know best. The Prophet knows, he knows the answer. But the idea of getting information and talking it through, clarifying, plays a big part. So it's so important that in a society, when I told you one of the reasons why we wrote the book War Within the Hearts, I had a lot of questions. I played high school ball, got to play some, at a higher collegiate level, I had, why I can't go here? I want to go to this part. Why can't I go here? Homecoming game, blah, blah, blah. All these situations where, why can't we? And if you don't have clarifications or questions, and then you start being like, well, if the religion doesn't have answers, there must be something wrong with the faith. So it's so important that having that, again, at your house, if a child has an issue, are you open to discussion? Are you open to find someone else they could discuss with? Are you open to a situation at school and say what they're feeling about that class, or what they want to be when they grow up, or what class they want to take, or their discussion on a family? So that becomes another conversation or a discussion. We're going to have to talk about communication. 80% of how you learn is through experience. When they experience something, it plays a big part. Because now, the friends they're hanging out with, what they're experiencing, what they're talking about is going to play a big part of how they're going to retain information, but it could also manifest into their behavior and character. And so that's why it's so important that sometimes that experience plays a big thing. Right? I'm going to give you a funny joke, but I think it'll go a long way. 80%, my father came in the 1960s. So all his 8 siblings, his siblings, my mom's 8 siblings, all came through our house at a certain time for a few minutes. Like 2-bedroom apartment, they still live in the same place, 1,400 square foot, 1 bathroom. Now I know, any kid's like, oh my God, you have to share the bathrooms. I'm like, that's why I tell these kids are soft now. I'm just like, that's another conversation. We need about 2 hours here. Each one we're going to break down. But one of the things was, I remember, I was 8 years old, 9 years old, but experience, it was like, no, it's about families helping out. You don't know how tough it was in life. And like, okay, you don't really understand it. So I went back to Hyderabad, India, Yahudpura. At the age of 14, 1980s, get off the plane. Get out there, pick you up. First, you're like, okay, make sure don't give anyone your bags, this and that. Everyone's trying to take your bag. You got to bribe someone so you can just get your bag, whatever. You get into the rickshaw, all these animals everywhere, buffaloes everywhere, congestion, mosquitoes, everything's, you finally get home, you're hot. You want to drink the water, you can't drink the water, right? Because the water is dirty. You have to now, the well water is dirty. You're trying to kind of fill this up. So that becomes a problem. The food, you love it, but the stomach's a problem. Then you have to go outside to the bathroom, which is the toilet outside. Then you got to worry about the geckos inside of it. Then you got to worry about the jinn inside of it. All these little situations happen, right? So all these little things, you just hate it, right? Have that, the food, the mosquitoes like American blood, they're biting you all the way over. My father sent me to Salem for 2 weeks in a village where I get picked up, buffalo cart, lanterns, bathroom outside, 2 rocks. I could go on, but I'm just going to quickly, the short thing is, after 3 months, I came back, like Shawshank Redemption, shukran ya Allah, America, I kissed the ground and everything. What was that experience change? Father could tell me anything, but until we sometimes experience, so whatever we experience, or when my father used to, at Sunday school, I used to complain about it, I couldn't really complain too much because he himself, a lot of parents drop off, go shopping, come back at 2 o'clock. My parents would both teach Sunday school. My mom's still teaching, 60 years, 58. So then I couldn't complain. So I was like, hey, when a parent says something, but they themselves are doing it, it's hard for the kid to be like, right? We didn't watch TV. My dad didn't watch TV, so I couldn't really keep me like, well, you're making me not watch you. It was a tough ballgame. Now, can we all do that? No. But the idea of experience, and 95% is when you teach someone else, right? But the idea, again, that 50, seeing and hearing plays a big part. Discussion in your household, what they're discussing, who they're discussing, where they're discussing, is it the internet, the phone, and you, mashallah, give your kid a phone that's another conversation, phones, at the age of 8 years old because you think your child's a mashallah child. I'm going to tell you, ya Allah, Allah protect him. So that becomes the other situation, right? So 70% discussion, 80% experience. Where is that? In your family right now. So when we get into these topics, keep that in mind as we go through and saying, okay, how do we build solutions and ideas or build that positive parenting? Because at the end, you do have the keys for your house. 8 hours is a school. The other 8 hours are with you, which about 12 hours. Well, they sleep for about 8 hours. They watch video games for another 6 hours. And they maybe talk to you for 1 hour. So that's going to be another conversation, communication. All right, so Jazakallah khair.
I just want to just listen to your stories all night here. I think, I mean, there's enough lesson in all of those, inshallah. Story night. Story night with Brother Habeeb, inshallah. Dr. Jawad, coming back to you real quick, you mentioned a bunch of different challenges. I want to try to start breaking those down a little bit. Mental health is a topic that we're talking about more often now, and it's something that I think, alhamdulillah, our community is starting to realize that there is a need and there is an issue that we are struggling. I think for a lot of us, as parents in general, we agree that mental health is an issue in our community until it's our child. Then it's like, no, it's not my child. My child is good. My child doesn't have ADHD. My child is perfectly fine. They don't have any disorder. They don't have any, mental health is real, but it's not real with my kid. Like, my kid just making this up. And we see this becoming more and more of a challenge. On the school side, we see this becoming an increased challenge for students and for parents. And Brother Habeeb, maybe you can share your thoughts on that as well. But can you just sort of break down some of the mental health stats that we are seeing now? And in what areas are we seeing this? And what type of issues in the mental health realm are we facing today?
Yeah. So I feel like I'm the bearer of bad news today, just like sharing bad statistics. But the idea here is this, right? I think Noman alluded to this. The more you are aware that this is happening, not only in my, in that mashallah kid, right? All of a sudden he has a mental health issue, or right? Like, oh my God, Ahmed and Zaid got some, they're diagnosed with depression, or this guy he's on medication. See, when you realize that the numbers are actually way bigger than we think they are, and that they are more prevalent than we think they are, and that mental health illness is sitting in this room as we speak, and that there are people walking around with mental health issues, that in turn decreases the stigma, right? So the reason I'm sharing these numbers is not so that, again, Dr. Jawad just giving us bad news out, from the first 10, 20, 30 minutes. It's like, hey, it's prevalent. Like, these numbers are not fake, and these numbers are real, and that it's happening around us. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decided that this is an illness, mental illness, whether it's physical illness, that He will test us with. So whether our child is tested with this or not, that's Allah's decree, right? That's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's decree. So a few numbers I'll share, and I think Noman asked me this question: which type of mental illnesses do we see? For the sake of this discussion, for the sake of today, I would say that depression and anxiety are the top two disorders that we really need to focus on, right? Now, there are things like oppositional defiancy in young children. These are behavioral disturbances you see, kids being aggressive or not following directions or not listening to authority. There are substance abuse issues. There is PTSD, eating disorders, ADHD, right? Bipolar, OCD, all of that. And in less cases, schizophrenia. But the point here is that let's just focus on anxiety and depression, as that's the larger piece of the pie, right? So for that, so I kind of didn't give any other statistics here. I didn't want to bring up anything else because that's not really relevant to the community by and large. But the symptoms, the diagnosis of depression and anxiety since COVID-19, the pandemic, the rates in adolescents and young children has doubled. Okay, and if you can look at all the numbers, that the numbers have been, actually in recent studies are also showing this, that there has been a doubling of the diagnoses of anxiety and depression in young adolescents, and that 20% of adolescents 12 to 17 years old experienced major depressive disorder, which is a clinical depressive disorder. So 1 in 5, okay? 1 out of 10 youth experience severe depression. And when I say severe depression, that is to the point where they're no longer functioning at school, and they're experiencing debilitating symptoms such as suicidal thoughts and so on. Right? We talked about the 1 in 5 young adults are living with a mental health condition, right? 1 in 4 families are dealing with a mental health issue at the present time. So that basically means that if you look around the room, right, there are a lot of families in this room represented. So 1 out of every 4 is dealing with a mental health issue right now. So what's the point I'm trying to say? You are not alone, right? We are not alone. Right? It's not just 1 kid or 2 kids, and it's not, oh my God, when Noman said, my son develops a disorder, it shouldn't be like, oh my God, no, it can't be my son. My kid is not possible. No, it's like, okay, it could be my son, because there are a lot of other families that are dealing with this. One important stat, 50% of lifetime cases, let me just say this, 75% of lifetime cases of mental illness begin by age 24. Sorry, before age 24, right? And 50% are by age 14. So what does that tell you? That mental illness is a disease of the young, right? 75% are diagnosed before the age of 24. Of all lifetime cases of mental illness, 75% are occurring in those under 24 years old. So that's an important stat for us to recognize. 26% of the graduating class of Notre Dame University, I say this is a really important stat. 26% of the graduating class of Notre Dame sought counseling at the counseling department. 8,000 enrolled students, that means 2,000 kids sought counseling at the Notre Dame counseling department. What does that tell you? What does that tell us? That it's prevalent. We are not alone, right? Right? One last thing I'll say, American College Health Association study, which basically surveyed college students across the United States, right? Thousands, the N is high. Basically, the sample size is very big. That 10% of those kids, so if you imagine 20,000 kids, 30,000 kids, 10% of them had seriously considered suicide at some point. And that 2% of that crowd had actually attempted suicide. So again, what's the point? Not to scare us, oh my God, but let's move back to Pakistan again, right? It's not going to solve it if you go back to Pakistan, right? Or India. That, it's here. We are not alone, right? Your neighbor is dealing with it. If you go just go to a Jummah. Just go to a Jummah and look around. And you can just say, okay, this person, I'm not saying specifically, but that so-and-so X number of people, every 6th person, every 7th person is dealing with a mental health issue. And then we know that suicide is the second leading cause of death in the young population. Basically in adolescence, it is the second leading cause of death, right? So, two more statistics and I'll wrap up. 27% of those who were severely depressed got help. That's a very poor number, right? That's like saying if I break if I break someone else's ankle on the basketball court, I'm Habeeb, mashallah, actually play collegiate. I dreamed of playing collegiate, never did. In Jannah though, I will. In NBA I'll play. But if I break someone's ankle, 99.9% of the time that guy's gonna go to the ER. Yes or no? But if someone gets depressed, why is it that 25% of the time they're gonna go seek help? That makes no sense, right? It's an illness. It's a bodily illness. Now, take home points. Not to fear mongering. We're not trying to create fear in everyone here and going home and starting to diagnose your kids. Okay? Beta, what's going on? Dr. Jawad scared us. You are not alone. We are not alone. We are all dealing with this. We are in this together as a team, right? We're an ummah. The Prophet ﷺ, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decided to decree that some of us are going to be tested with mental illness, some of us are going to be tested with physical illness. And that if everyone is dealing with it, then why could there be a stigma? Tell me, why is there a stigma if we're all dealing with it? Right? Anas bin Malik spent many years with the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ, he's narrating this hadith to us where the Prophet ﷺ said, Ya hayyu ya qayyum bi rahmatika astaghis. What are you saying? That, oh Allah, like, he's voicing the Prophet ﷺ is voicing his grief. And he's voiced it so much so that it was audible that Anas bin Malik is now narrating it to us. What does that tell us? The Prophet ﷺ wasn't afraid to show his vulnerabilities, express that he was feeling grief, that he needed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's help. So where is the stigma coming from? There should be no stigma. It's gotten better. I'll grant you that, Noman. But I think that we still need to overcome this barrier because when it comes into our families, like Noman said, it's not possible. That's me. So I'll let Habeeb jump in if he has anything.
And then not only that we understand that, I think I'm so happy he brought up the idea of the stigma. I think we have gotten better. And I know a lot of times, and I want us to really get this clear, as when we talk that whole, think about a kid. If a child feels, if I might bring this up, parents might not understand this, or it might be embarrassing, we might. And this happens with parents too. Because what people might think, we might not want to fix the problem. So I think it's so important than ever before that we have to realize and keeping that communication. So one thing that we could all look at, like something we could take home, all of us have to look at how are we communicating with our kids. And it has to start when they're young, right? When they're young, and I'm telling you, car is a great time to have conversations. But we're always coming in, and it happens. A lot of times I do the parking duty every day. Mom's got the hijab holder on the scarf, right? And now, kid comes in, Assalamu alaikum, boom, TV, something else is watching on, they're putting on iPods, but why not having that conversation, right? Because the conversation, a lot of times parents are like, well, I want to communicate with my child. I ask them, how's your day? They say, like that same kid when they were like, Fatima when she was young, it's like, Mommy, I did this in school, I did that in school. That child will when they're 5 years old, they'll even let you pick your clothes. They're like, Mama, you're the best clothes pick in the whole world. Pick anything you want. They'll do everything. It was all about mom and dad, right? They would, even at the store, they would stay by you. That same child, Ahmad Fatima, at 16, parents go, what happened? Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu became salams. How's your day? Good. What you do? Nothing. School is boring. I have a lot of work you don't understand. Their parents, and then when you walk into the door, Auzu billahi minash shaitani rajim. Oh, mashallah, she's listening to the Quran, right? Everyone has that. And why I bring this up to that communication. So one place I think we need to change is in the car, taking some time to have a conversation. And here's the thing. Why ask the child? Why not start off and saying, guys, this is what happened at my day today at school or at work. I did this. And guess what? You will really surprise them. Ask your wife, how was your day? Kids like, oh my God, mom and dad talk. That's going to be another whole situation, right? Mom and dad will talk. If it's not about homework, grades, report card, throw the garbage out. That's always how Baba used to talk, at least at our ages, right? Right? So, I mean, mashallah, you know, cooler parents now, right? But that conversation, so that is one, just having that conversation, starting off. And guess what? It's a great time to do it. Do it at dinner. And not watch something and eat dinner where everyone's doing their own time and say, hey, look, let's try to put that. Everyone needs to block off 10 minutes to 15 minutes of your family time, whatever that is. If that's dinner time, that you sit down. For us, it was Maghrib, 5:30. Even if it was not summertime, still 5:30. Baba's home. Come in, 5:45. Eat. 6:15. We could go back out again, right? But that half an hour, it was time of dinner. We all sat there like, I hope Dad doesn't ask me something. Wherever, one of those conversations. But that opportunity of making it, or even that idea of saying, hey, there's a 5-minute. We're going to have a small one hadith, not no bayan. Or one little small thing plays a big part. So having communication. And if they could see that you are communicating, positive communication between mom and dad towards other children, then they're going to also communicate better because they're going to experience it. And the other part of learning is discussion. If you're opening conversations about, and then also showing your own, like, man, I need your advice on something. A child to feel like, you know what, even it might be something small, that plays a big part. So experiencing communication plays a big thing. Your child's a little baby and says, you know, like when my son used to, Bob, I can't find my toy. All right, ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help you. I might even know where it is. But that connection and saying, look, have that. And every time he remembers, like, Ya Allah, help me find this toe. He looks. Hey, I think you need to look over there. Finds it. Awesome. Thank you, Baba. Who else you should think? Allah. The idea of communicating, connecting people to what you think is important plays a big part, right? So the way you communicate with your brothers or with your mother, like my parents at 86, 84, you know, they have their moments where you just want to be like, but if they see if I get angry or I get frustrated with my parents, they're going to see that. But if they see that, hey, I'm going to visit them every week, or I call them, like, you know, or as I told my parents still, my mom still doesn't trust me, like, did you arrive when I travel? Did you, call me when you arrive. I'm like, okay. Call me when you get to the airport. Okay. I'm back home in Chicago. Call me again. Right? Those kind of things, then kids are going to say, there's this correlation of respecting our elders. Hey, Baba, Ammi still respect their elders. They're trying to help out. That's something I need to do. So kind of keeping that in mind, that one aspect of communication is one key certain thing that I feel like in these conversations, as you get through, that they might start saying, I'm not feeling well. Things are bothering me. I'm feeling down. That's good that you're telling us. And I know that sometimes we want to react, but if the way we communicate and you're like, how dare you? They're like, well, it's better not say it again, right? So I'll cover myself because that reaction was, a very not comfortable reaction. I'd rather not say something. When we wrote the book, War Within the Hearts, one of the top 7, we took statistics. Number 4 was double personality, where kids felt that if I told my parents really what I was thinking, I would feel very embarrassed. I might be sent back home, so I'd rather not say something. Right? I'd rather not share. So you know how a lot of us, when we grew up, right, you like, oh, look at this boy, mashallah, and you're like, we know, you don't, right? So having those kind of like, dual personalities because they felt that they can't be who they really are in front of them is very important.
Yeah, and I think, mashallah, that's great. And what Habeeb said, I will add to that, like, the nonverbal communication like that we do, right? So a lot of times we'll talk to our kids. Oh, sorry, yeah. They're sitting at the table, and we're standing on top of them, right? One of the things I always tell my patients is that, or in consultations, is that when you're talking to your children, get on their eye level. So sit in a chair across from them at the same eye level, right? Hold a hand, put a hand on the knee, right? Put your arm around their shoulder, right? Make eye contact in that way. A lot of times the communication is happening also, I think Habeeb alluded to this, in a setting where it's not possible to communicate. Like the TV's on, the iPad's going, the alarm clock is running, the kid, there's 5 other siblings there, right? The best communication with your child is one-on-one. What I tell people, practically speaking, on a weekday, you take 1.5 to 3 minutes, right? 1.5 to 3 minutes, go in their bedroom, you and them sit on the bed side by side, eye to eye, hand on their shoulder, hand around the shoulder, hand on their knee, and spend 2.5 minutes with each child. Because realistically, if I tell you, go home and spend 10 minutes with each child, it's just not going to happen, right? If you have 3 or 4 kids, that's 40 minutes, 45. I'm just realistically. So on a weeknight, sit at their eye level in their bedroom, no devices, no other siblings around, and just have a conversation. And I think Habeeb mentioned this, right? The reason we talk about this communication being so important is because it then allows you to pick up on the subtleties. Like if you know who they sit with at lunch every day, then on the 9th day when they tell you that they didn't sit with that person at lunch again, now you know something's going on, right? So the idea is to be alert and be clued into what's changed in their routine. And if we're not spending that 1.5 to 3 minutes every day with each child, it becomes very difficult to pick up on these things. One thing he also said, I think an example that comes to mind, when we're dealing with our children in terms of communication, I think this is a great topic, probably spend a good time on this, amount of time on this. When the Prophet ﷺ, when Fatima radiallahu anha used to walk into a room, right, there's 3 things he used to do, right? He used to greet her, he used to stand up, kiss her on the forehead and say, sit in my spot, right? That's nonverbal communication. He didn't say much, but what he did was he imparted dignity, honor, he made her feel worthy, right? So when we talk about communication, it's not just the conversations. I agree with that, but it's also the nonverbal cues. Hugs. It's okay to hug your kids. Like my dad, he was funny because I couldn't go on a road trip with my dad growing up. May Allah bless him. I love my dad. He's one of the greatest human beings on the planet, mashallah. But I couldn't go on a 4-hour road trip with him. It was awkward. Like, what are we going to talk about for 4 hours? I was going to look over here, and there was no phones. Right? So I couldn't do this on my phone. I couldn't scroll. I was just like, okay, well, I'm just going to sit here. He's going to ask me about my grades, and then that's it. 3.5 hours later, we'll be at our destination. So that's fine. The conversation is really important. Mashallah, Habeeb really hit on that. But hugs, kisses, it's okay. Like it's okay. I know in our culture we come from, at least my culture, in Indo-Pak culture, we come from this idea that like touching your kid is not a good thing, right? Or holding their hand, right? So I just wanted to add to that. There's lots of things we can say about communication. We can just go back and forth on this. One other one I like from the example of Sira is give your kids nicknames. I'm sure all of us do. Maybe we don't. But the Prophet ﷺ had a nickname for his Hassan and Hussain. He had a nickname for them. He used to call them 2 sweet-smelling flowers. That's how he used to refer to his grandsons. So we all should have like really nice, keep it private, right? I have a friend, his nickname is Pumpkin. It doesn't work. It's kind of weird. I was like, I look at you totally differently now. But like in the home, have nicknames for your kids. That's a form of communication. Because when you call out, oh yeah, yeah, Isu, right? My Isa's here. Like I say Isu, it's a special, it imparts something, right? I don't want to say too much. I'll go back and forth on this. Habeeb, you want to add some more?
Regarding, especially guys, if you have daughters, you need to make sure you hug them. Like if something like one of the things you might see in middle school, image is very important, right? And it's so important that it's the first guy, and I always remind them, I say, the first guy who ever loves you is me. Before anyone else not in high school, I'm like, before any other guy tells you how pretty, who said it first? Baba. I'm like, remember that, right? Right? And the idea of having a hug, and I understand that in a cultural context, but the D is like our teacher is our prophet, not our culture. Like, I get a story, but just to show you how it happens. When I first came to an Islamic school, like I dress up on Fridays, costumes, and kids could call me. So sometimes they call me, oh, that's a silly principal. So someone had once came up and said, Brother Khadir, do you remember when back home, when we saw the principal? We looked down. We didn't even see the principal. We were scared. So much respect, scared. We fear the principal. I said, that's not my teacher. I'm not worried. I don't want them to respect me out of fear. I want them to respect me out of love. That I don't want to disappoint Mr. Quadri, right? I want them to, because the prophet, did everyone go, there's a prophet, let's walk away, right? Oh, he's so scared. Oh my God, right? Like sometimes even right now, like you look down, I'm like, look, if the prophet, everybody wanted to be around him, why are we now, when someone's a high level, that we're trying to be like, stay away from them? That's not our duty, right? So in the same way with our own kids, it is so important to realize maybe back home it was girls, moms took care of moms. But this is a society where you need to make sure that the male figure and to have that father to just be there. And that's why as they get older, you know how 2 minutes make sense? But then sometimes we're just like, hey, it's going to be father-daughter date night. Right? I know some of you guys like stuff. I'm saying just going out and just talking ice cream and just go like, hey, what's going on? And not have to go straight into grades. What's going on? What you thinking? All right, what you guys kind of listening to? How's Harry Styles? Oh my God, how do you know about him? Like, game, you know. I'm not trying to justify music, so sorry, stuff a lot. Oh my God, it's on TV. My mistake. All right. I'm not a scholar. You can blame him, or you can blame him, not me. Right? So I'm trying to cover you, just in case, someone's there. I forgot this is on YouTube, right? Stuff a lot. All right. My kids are going to kill me. All right. If people don't know me, I'm very not serious. All right.
No, mashallah. Jazakallah khairan. I think. And it's being real, right?
Yeah.
It's being real. I mean, we have to understand that, look, our kids are doing things, are exposed to things, are listening to things that maybe we didn't listen to or we weren't exposed to, but they are. I had a parent who said to me, like, I know my kids are on social media. I know there's a lot, but I don't want to learn that world. I just don't want to be there. I don't want to have an account. I don't want to be there watching and seeing what they're doing. And I said to her, listen, sister, if you're not willing to learn or to at least understand what your children are involved in, it's going to be very difficult for you to actually help them or actually guide them in regards to the etiquettes and the way that they are conducting themselves in these different areas and different spaces. And so, I don't know if you guys had anything else on communication. I wanted to go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just gonna add. I kind of I kind of sat down and made a list for myself a while back, and I'm just gonna share it with you guys, and we can take benefit if we can. But one thing the axiom I think is to think about in terms of like your communication relationship with your child is that when the child is younger, you're more of the parental role, right? You're serving as a parent, and as the child ages and gets into their teenage years, you're starting to become more and more like a friend, right? Now, I'm not saying like it's a friendship and now you completely lost all the boundaries of adab and akhlaq. But what I'm saying is the direction that the relationship is going is towards friendship as they get older, and as they get younger, it's towards more of an authoritarian, like a parent, right? Like an actual parent, where you set limits and so on. So, a few tidbits on communication. So, one thing I've always learned is that, this facilitates conversation. If you're kind of wondering, how do I communicate? If they just say, how's everything at school? Good. You're not getting much out of it. One thing that, this is in the literature and psychology as well, tell stories about your childhood to your child. Start sharing with them things that you went through growing up. It's a very good conversation starter, and it helps children kind of start to see you in a different light, and that opens up conversation. When you're correcting your child, what I always say is sandwich the correction between love. Sandwich the correction between love. What I mean by that is show love. Praise them. Right? This is the same thing in the business world. When you give feedback, you start with the positive and you sandwich the criticism in between. So show love, correct, and then show love again. And never correct in terms of communication. Do this privately. Don't do it around the 3 other siblings, right? That's never a good idea. And do not correct, if you're correcting your child and you need to communicate with them that something they did wrong, don't do it in the heat of the moment, right? Because 2 things deteriorate in the heat of the moment, right? The listening ability of the child and the cooperation of the child. So that's another tidbit. Habeeb mentioned this, poker face. When they say to you, I found that, I was with a group of friends and they were smoking marijuana, you don't drop your jaws, right? It's like, okay, it's poker face. No, nothing. Okay, good. Keep going, right? The second your leja is a leja. When second your expression changes in your mouth, in your face, then they pick up on that and they will not come to you again and share with you what's going on, right? Take interest in their interests. We talk about admitting your mistakes. I always tell parents, admit your mistakes to your child. We're not, again, blurring the boundary. We're not asking you to divulge all your vulnerabilities to your child, but admit your mistakes. Do things with them. We talked about that. Factor in their opinion. Take the mashwara from your child. That imparts on them a sense of confidence and makes them feel like, I'm a part of this family. I have some worth. My ideas are worth something. Set limits, but in a kind manner. Okay? Don't protect them from every consequence. We'll talk about that later. In terms of communication, try to understand what your child's really saying. So when your child says to you, oh, Baba, I don't like you, right? When you hear that, What they're really saying is, Baba, I want you to feel sorry for how I'm feeling. You understand? There's a vulnerability. A lot of us, and kids do this especially, we express anger, but what we really feel is abandonment, loneliness, not belonging. So that's the expressed emotion, and then the latent emotion is what's inside. So even when you're communicating with your child, if you're angry, say to them how you really feel. Like, I am disappointed that you did such and such, as opposed to, I'm so angry with you, right? It's a subtle change in the way you communicate, but that can work. I'm not going to go into too much more. I think one more thing I'll say is that to communicate with the child, sometimes you need to do, like, you know how when you get really sick, you have to be hospitalized, right? So if something serious is going on with your child, what I recommend is a hospitalization. And what is that hospitalization? You take your child one-on-one, you and your one son or daughter, if they're struggling with something serious, take them out in nature and spend a day with them. The benefits of nature and the barakah of nature we know about. But you can go camping, you can go fishing. We don't do fishing in desis. We don't do that. But fine, do something, go archery, right? Sunnah, mashallah, tabarakallah, right? So do something outdoors, so combine nature, one-on-one time, and no devices. If you do that for one day, for 16 hours, 24 hours with your child, whatever issue they're going with, we talked about all the pressures they deal with, we talked about all the mental health issues they deal with. If you do that, that's like a hospitalization. That's like a detox. It's like, let me get to know my son or daughter, and I guarantee you, coming away from that one day, you'll have a much stronger relationship, and inshallah, it can manifest in some positive experiences downstream.
Inshallah. Jazakallah khairan. I want to end off with one more point before we go to the Q&A. We have about 20 questions that came in already. So I think a lot of that conversation might happen during the question and answers. But I want to conclude with what I think, and as Dr. Jawad mentioned in the very beginning, if, Brother Habeeb, you also mentioned this point of social media and the challenges of social media, what our kids are exposed to, what the reality is for many kids on social media and what they're exposed to, versus what we perceive or what we think that our kids are doing and our kids are involved in on social media. So if you can sort of shed some light on, again, number one, what are those challenges that we face from a social media perspective, right? Now that we go into this new era of the metaverse, and what are some of those challenges? And as parents, how can we be up to date on that stuff? How can we protect our kids and what they're viewing and what they're watching, and protecting them from, getting onto the wrong apps or the wrong websites? So what is our role, and how can we help with some of that stuff?
Yeah, I mean, right now, just research, you have 6 to 18-year-olds, at least 3 to 4 hours of screen time. So that could be TV, Netflix, phones, and social media. So now you know that majority of the kids are on there. From 16 and up, it's like 95 somewhat percent, and they're on social media. So we know that it's happening. The question is, what we have to do is put some parameters. If your child is before the age of 13, I've seen it, some of us, I've tried doing it with my own kids, there's no need for the child to have a smartphone at the age in 4th grade, 5th grade. This device is the www. Whatever you want to see, whoever you want to talk to, whenever you want to talk to, and it's a big problem. I honestly believe many of this mental illness, again, no doubt of genetics, environment, but this also has played a big part with this, when you have dopamine levels of getting likes, how many likes, what people think, if I don't get enough, what to see, what you're seeing, waking up, screen time, going to sleep before screen time. The mind's being wired, even at a young age than ever before. Our minds are not ready for this. So that's one. So if you do have a phone, I would say, if you need it for safety and security, get a flip phone, or get a phone that's limited with how many phone calls you have, like the ones our grandparents have. Right? Like my parents still have the old phone. So I told my son, hey, you use this if you need it. But the idea is, yes, there's going to be a time when they have it. So when they do get that phone, as long as you could push it through, like high school, then you need to put the parameters on the phone. Screen time, you'll have different programs. You need to plug that in, and there's a part where you could put all the parameters on there, like it can't go to this website, and then they could still get a phone, and they can have their own password just for unlocking the phone, but they can't get into the parental controls. That has to happen, even though I don't care how great your child is. 68% of 11-year-old boys have seen something they shouldn't have, just because young kids, you would understand what I'm trying to get at. Adult, websites which are unacceptable. And the problem is, there were websites, which I have to give Christian right groups who've done a phenomenal job trying to push back. These websites were so close to names of stuff that they know that to change it, right? Like, and that's where it's at. I mean, just to kind of crazy how it is, I'm giving you one example. Pokemon is a cartoon. You type in A except an O, it was a adult gay website. Just to show you how nuts. Now they pushed back on this, right? There was a big defense fund, a big push about. There were so many, and I could give examples. I'll get worried when kids hear, they're gonna like type to see. That's why I'm trying to not bring it up. But I'm trying to tell you, you have to. If you have the TV, which brother Dr. Jawad brought a great example. We watched 7 channels, and we were the antennas, and we were the remote controls. Like, better go change the channel, right? If, right now you go to sleep at 10 o'clock because it's soon enough to go sleep early. Your child's there like at 12 o'clock, flipping through 500 channels. You have to put a parameter. At our house, I told my wife to put the password for the Comcast with PG-13. So if I have to watch something, I'll ask to get the password, right? It is something. I don't care if it's daughters, sons, whatever. It's equal opportunity. Shaitan goes for everybody. So the idea is that we're not saying, hey, if they're going to watch something, but at least you're trying to put some blocks, and there's going to be a time that they're going to be exposed. I don't like this parents like, well, they have to be exposed anyway, but not at this young age. They're not ready for it. The frontal lobe of a child is not where the BET, right? If I remember, behavior, emotions, and thoughts are not developing the age of 25. So why would you give a child at this age the whole world in front of us? You will never want them to go to a club. You will never want them to be around a bar at 14, 15, but you're giving them access to go and see everything that happens in it. So those are things, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect you.
Yeah, I think I agree. Since 2006, was the advent of, I think, Zanga, MySpace. If any of you guys really know what that is, then you're really dating yourself. But that's okay. And if some of you are on it, I feel bad for you. But anyways, so 2006 is when social media started to proliferate. If you look at the membership data, you'll see that from 2006 onwards, the number started to skyrocket, right? Now we have like 2 billion people on Facebook, or 2 point whatever it is. SubhanAllah, it's unbelievable. But since 2006, the rates of depression in 12 to 24-year-olds has climbed. Right? The age-adjusted suicide rate has gone up by 3 points. That's insane. If you look at statistically, that's a big deal. So yes, Habeeb's right. There's no doubt that the proliferation of the iPhone, the technology and social media has led to the increase in mental health issues, whether it's ADD, ADHD, anxiety, depression, FOMO, whatever, right? Is FOMO a disorder? I don't know. It could be. But, and this, again, I don't think we need to convince this crowd that social media is bad. But I think one thing I just want to highlight, a couple points. The kids, when they're on social media and they're setting up their profiles, they have an Instagram page, they post something on Facebook, they're looking for likes, right? Right? The kids are then looking for likes from conditional sources of validation. What I mean by that is, your mom is never going to cancel you. My mom, I've done a lot of crazy things as a kid. SubhanAllah, my mom never canceled me, right? But when you are on social media, you're going to get canceled tomorrow by 6 million people at once. You can have 100,000 people cancel you tomorrow because you're looking for validation from. Oh, cancel culture. Yeah, what I mean by that is you can be unliked, or you can be unsubscribed from, or you can be not followed anymore, right? So when your kids are looking for this validation that they're looking for, because a lot of times when you're on social media, you're looking for validation from the crowd, from the peers you never met. But those people are going to give you conditional validation, correct or not? Right? I mean, the person doesn't know you is not going to unconditionally validate you all the time. But who will? Right? I always joke around about this when I give presentations. I tell these guys, I don't have a social media account, but if I did, I probably have 3 followers. Right? My mom, my sister, and my daughter. Right? But those 3 would be the best 3 followers ever because they're unconditional. So those 3 followers are worth more than 16 million followers because those 16 million followers are fake. It's not real. Right? So if we feel that our child is using social media to get some sort of validation, that means we need to provide that validation. Because as parents, we need to be the one to provide it. Image pollution, I mean, he touched on this. No one would be okay if I went into their bedroom and dropped garbage in there every day and then didn't remove it. So when the kid does one scroll with their thumb, one scroll down, you see 19 images of things that he shouldn't have seen. Now compound that hour after hour after hour, it just becomes image pollution, in which the analogy is I came into your room, I dropped a bunch of garbage and never took it away. And just keep piling it on. And it's hard to get rid of these images. So I don't think we have to convince this crowd. You know, growing up, my parents had to watch out for 2 doors of friends coming into the house, the front door and the back door. Now us as parents, we have to watch hundreds of doors. Because through every app, there's people trying to get into our kids, right? There's friends trying to come in. So now it was 2 doors, now it's thousands of doors, right? Hundreds of doors. So what to do? I agree with the screen time recommendation. I use screen time. If you have an Apple phone, which I think majority of you do, and if you don't, I'm sorry, okay? Because Android is just not working. I don't know why you would do that to yourself. But if you have an Apple phone, screen time is the app. Look, Noman, I'm saying this now, I'm kind of putting these guys on the spot, maybe Dr. Omar can do this. You need to have someone in your community that is like the tech expert that can work with the parents sitting here and be like, hey, this is how I can help you get your kids' devices monitored. It is confusing. Like he said, you can set up passwords on your Wi-Fi router. Your Comcast, you can set up blocks there. You can shut the Wi-Fi off every night at 10:15 p.m. Right? Screen time is a very intricate and very elaborate app which you can control every aspect of their exposure. My daughter has an iPhone, but she has 3 apps on it. So it's basically a dumb phone. Right? So you can call, and there's a limit of 5 minutes a day on Safari. Right? So you can make these parameters. So I agree, Habeeb, completely. We need to do that. If you have an Android, so I would say someone in your congregation, Imam, if has this expertise, let them be the liaison so the parents can touch base. There's a lot more to say. No devices in bedrooms. That should be an absolute no-no in the house, right? If you can make this happen, you should have one main TV in the main floor. That should be the TV in which the kids try to watch. Now, I know if you have 4 or 5 kids, it's hard, okay? But maybe you have the single TV there, and ideally, okay, don't quote me on this and go home and be like, right, we're all failing. Ideally, you have no other devices they watch on. That's the ideal. So if they want to watch something, they're going to watch it on the big screen in front of everybody, right? That creates a very safe environment where they're not going to be watching in their iPad in the corner of the bedroom, right? So no devices in the bedroom. I think that's what I wanted to add to what mashallah, but Habeeb said. There's so much to be said on this, but I don't want to take up time.
And I think that we can start covering, some of this in the Q&A because a lot of questions are coming in, and I think one question I want to get to right away because we haven't touched on it yet is with the rise of identity, issues, of gender issues, in your fields as educator and as a psychiatrist, how do you address sort of hot button issues like atheism, LGBTQ? How do you address issues of a person, not wanting to believe anymore?
So yeah, I mean, this is obviously a huge issue, right? We're battling postmodernism, liberalism, feminism, atheism, agnosticism, every ism you can think of, right? This is why I have a lecture on isms, I think. We're going to have Habeeb Qadri story night, then isms, okay? But I think the first thing is that this is why we talked about communication and having a relationship with your child. And this is why I bring up, look, you should know what pressures your child is facing. You should know what that mental illness is out there, and then you should have a strong relationship with your child. Because your antidote to a lot of these things is having a relationship with your child. Because if you don't have that strong relationship with your child does not feel he can come to you, then he or she will go to the forum on Reddit. He or she will go to Jackie in the school or Michael at school. So, or Zaid, right? It doesn't matter who it is at this point. We want the child to come to us. So the antidote to a lot of these problems that Shaykh Noman just mentioned, especially like the idea that if you have a relationship with your child, it's almost impossible. The studies have verified this for fathers. If you are a practicing Muslim, male, the likelihood of your child inheriting religiosity is extremely high if you have a good relationship with your child. This is not coming from a Muslim study. It's coming from non-Muslim studies who looked at that children pick up the religion from their father more than their mother in terms of relationships, right? I'm not saying that tarbiyah of the mother doesn't count. Now you're gonna get messages like, Dr. Jawad's. I'm saying mothers are the most important. Of course, your mother. But what I'm saying is the relationship with the father. So I think Habeeb can add to this. If your child comes to you and says, I'm having some doubts about evolution, I need you to explain this to me. Okay, if you don't know the answer, at least they came to you. That's the success story. Then you can take it to Qari Noman, right? Go to his house Saturday night, bother him. Call him on Saturday night, please, if you have his number, right? But go to him at that point. Or if the question is about something that's beyond even the scope of, let's say it is about like identity, right? It's about fitting in or whatever the case is, then take them to a therapist. And before we forget to add this, if you are feeling like your son or daughter needs to talk to someone, and your local imam is busy or the local imam says, I can't handle this issue, then take them to a therapist, please. Any kind of therapist, social worker, I'm just adding this now because in case we forget. Social worker, psychologist, licensed professional counselor, there's all these types of confusing acronyms. But the idea here is get help. But the way that you get help, you are the conduit. So if you don't have a relationship with your child, it becomes, the child will go somewhere else before it comes to you. Okay? So I think you want to add to that, to the isms?
Yeah, and I think that's going to be a key factor, that there are going to have kids who are going to have questions and clarification. It might be them, or it might be their friends, or they're just thinking about it, and we have to have answers. That's why even something like the LGBTQ, it's something that questions always come. And if we just, before, you don't let them ask and say, is it the feeling, is it the action, if I have friends, we might be a part of MSA, and they want to do a collaboration on immigration rights. Everyone has it at a different level. So that's why it's so important to, hey, what are you asking? Let me find out. And if you don't have the answer, I talk to a lot of kids throughout the United States and overseas. With my own kids, there are some times where I might have someone else like, can you talk to my child? It's just the way it is, because I'm Baba. It's a different ball game, right? So sometimes you will have to have someone else to say the same thing, but you have to be that resource. And that's why I think it's so important. Just to give you an idea, even anything that's been extreme things, when I worked a little bit with Homeland Security, none of them been connected to a school, like these extreme kids who've done some, are thinking of doing something. They've never been connected to like a school or masjid or imam. It's like a lot of what they see online, right? And that's why this opportunity is that when they see stuff and they're watching different views and they're saying, well, how to justify even like this weed issue right now. People are justifying and saying, oh, I saw this. Look at the Shaykh. Look how big beard it is. I'm like, but do you know who really is that person? No, but kind of takes care of my desire. So that's why it's so important that these conversations that you are going to have with these kids, that opening up the door and finding the resource for them is going to be key.
And one more thing, a lot of these kids are seeing these isms and sort of like reading about these things online. And I always advocate for going back to one thing, that don't let your kids on an open algorithm environment or an open search environment. So Safari, Internet Explorer, is Internet Explorer still a thing? I don't even know, right? I haven't used Microsoft for a long time, alhamdulillah. But like, these are no open access to open search engines. There should be no reason why your child is on Chrome, Safari, or any other browser where they can search literally anything, right? Literally anything. So that's a no-no. Open algorithm environments, what I mean by that is feeds, like YouTube, okay? You go on YouTube, you want to watch something wholesome, right? Lecture by, mashallah, Dr. So-and-so, Shaykh Hamza Yusuf, whatever, you're watching it. All of a sudden in the feed says, how do you question, if you have questions about your religion. That's an algorithm that is fed to the child. So we should, now I'm not saying YouTube is haram, right? I'm not saying, okay, now all of a sudden there's a fatwa now on YouTube. But what I'm saying is the YouTube, like the open, anytime there's an algorithm being fed to your child, whether it be on TikTok, whether it be on Instagram, whether it be on Facebook, it's feeding them things that they otherwise weren't even thinking about. So why would we let them in those environments? So what you do is, you don't allow access. If they want access to YouTube, on that main screen in the family room, right? If they want to have access to YouTube, it's going to be in those environments. If they want to have access to Safari, limit it to minutes per day, or don't let them have it at all, or they can do it on your laptop. So a lot of these ideas don't necessarily come sometimes from a home school environment. They come from some ridiculous random place. And then now we're cleaning up the mess. So I think that goes back to the whole like media thing.
Inshallah. Another question here is the public school versus Islamic school debate. Brother Habeeb, you want to? The question is, does exposure to fitna early and making them see and understand better than keeping them in a bubble and sudden exposure at peak of their youth? That's a question.
So I'm just going to give you just 3 little points on this, because this could go back and forth. It depends on the kid. But we were talking about individuals. By the age of 0 to 9 years old, what you teach them, akhlaq, character, plays such a big part of how you'll see their skill sets as they get older. They're going to develop other things. But so that 0 to 9, I'm a big believer, looking at my generation who went to Sunday school, and a lot of people I grew up with, there maybe like we were all excited when we knew the 11 Surah Club after age 15, and then we're all excited when three people, we pray 3 times a day, like woo woo, The concern is, what is our goals? And at least in my mind, I look at if, again, making sure the schools with expectation like academics and dean. I'm not worried about the academics of our community to make sure their kids do well, because I think that's going to be a driving force anyway. But that shaitan factor when it comes to the deen, akhlaq, behavior is all there. And I worry is that we have, at least I could say, Ya Allah, for 8 hours a day, that they had an opportunity to learn the academia, but at the same time had morning du'as, prayed salah, learn, and if I could reinforce it, I could say to Allah, hey, I tried for 7, at least for the first 13, 14 years of their life, and then did my part. Because I know our generation, a lot of both husband and wife work, our times are a little bit busier, and I realize that tarbiyah is not happening, and if we're realizing at school they're coming, and then we're busy, where is it coming from? So at least that, hopefully that schools, as they kind of get better and better, these are some challenges there. And at the academic standards, I think a lot of schools are also developed and become better and better too. So if you could get both options at one place, it's something I do believe that at least in the lower grades is where they're foundational. Because if you don't get them there and you start them at middle school, the first whole year is resistance, right? But I'm a big believer that starting off the foundational is strong, and then even in middle school and high school, wherever the options are. But I think parenting has to go, and if everyone works together, school, community, and parents, and then inshallah, with only Allah could make things happen. But we do our best. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take care of the rest.
Inshallah.
Inshallah.
There was a question about how do I handle a middle schooler? How do I make tarbiyah of a middle schooler?
Yeah, so this is it. The middle schooler is okay. I'm going to tell you the age. When that mashallah child becomes a ya Allah child? Age 13. 13, something happens right in 7th grade. They even made movies called 13. I've seen it. Even though I've looked at, what the biggest discipline referrals in elementary school, which grade happens? 7th grade. Because they're coming to that age that they think they're cool. They want to act cool. They don't need Baba anymore. Mom, like in 4th, 5th grade, I realized that they're like, oh, Baba's cool. But 13, 14, right? Now I want to pick my own clothes. You don't know fashion. What's this religion about? Oh my God, so oppressive. I saw this article. All these kind of things that happen, right? Oh my God. Now the kid, we didn't care about his hair. Like sometimes they just comb the hair. Now it's all about the hair. Then they got this new fluff look in the front. I'm like, cut the hair. Like, okay, don't worry. I've asked that too. And they put the hoodies on all the time because it was like cool, right? Some of you guys are like, it's flashbacks, right? And if you don't have that, you have the mashallah child. So that's going to happen. So this is very important. That's why I believe if you at a young age, you have to have those relationships, because about 12, 13, there's going to be that resistance. And now, as Dr. Jawad brought up, this is where you are trying to be a friend. Even Ali radiallahu anhu, the first 7 years, you love your child. Next 7 years, be strict on your child. All right, Prophet, I've heard a few different parts of it, but 13 to 20, you be their friend. And it's very important that the idea of kind of listening, guiding them, being patient with them, right, is a little bit more at that time. And I think that's where you're going to have. But this is the other one we didn't get to, but I want to talk about, is friends. Friends is very important. Who they hang out with, just because they're Muslim doesn't mean anything. See, it's okay to be a person who's a snoop, right? I don't care. If I'm driving, it is very important that if they're all at your house, and every time you go down the basement, the channel always changes, that's an issue. If every time you're walking in, they stop talking, that's a problem, right? If you're driving, and mom, before you put on it, sometimes it's okay to just listen what their conversation they're having. They're talking about Lil Wayne, or, I want to know. I don't know what kind of conversations, who they're talking about, what kind of music it is, what's their drama about. Oh my God, she said, what did she say? It's your child. I'm going to be questioned for it on the day of judgment, so I want to know. I don't care what you think. Now you got to do it in a systemized way. And it doesn't mean when your friend comes, that's when you know what the friend is. Not like, Assalamu alaikum. Oh my God, you're so-and-so? So who's your parents? And that's parent alert. Oh, gee, uncle. Yeah. I'm good. Yeah, everything's good. Yes. Oh yeah, yes, inshallah, we will all pray. But you want to look at, if you don't tell them to pray, did they stop for prayer? Right? Did you kind of look at? See, I have my child, I have a phone. Where are you? Or where are you going to be? I'm going to double check. You know, I told you my parents never trust me. That's the best thing. I'm like, where are you? Nuseba? I'm like, okay. Let me just double check. Okay, true. Right? She's like, I don't trust you. I was like, no, that's my duty, just to double check. Right? You want to have that, right? So I think having these things at middle school, you're going to have some of their independence, but making sure who's there. And friends is huge, right? And so that's where we're going to have to look at who they are, where they hang out. And everything can't always be a religious thing at the masjid, right? So that's why I was saying masjids, when you have rollerblade, where they're going to go hang out somewhere, they're going to the basement and watching a movie, whatever it is, but making sure the parameters, and those parents have the same views as you. It is very important to make sure they have the same kind of things where something's okay at some places might not be okay with someone else, and I have to be like, okay, when you go there, and I know they might do this, at that time, you'll have to say, I know my parents want me to come home now. That's what's going to happen, right? Or whatever that situation is, because sometimes you want to be respectful, but you know their views or what they might watch or what they might be okay to listen to, I might not be okay. So you're going to have to put those parameters, and everyone's different, and saying, okay, we're okay with this, but this is the concept. But you have to let them be open, right? I'll give you an example. My daughter asked at the age of, when she graduated at MCC, she said, Baba, she plays basketball. If I don't wear the scarf, are you going to be mad at me, right? It's a good question. I was like, first of all, I'm so happy you asked me. I said, thank you for asking me. I said, give me a hug, right? Now the question is, my first question was, do you think it's a commandment of Allah? She said, yes. Right now I don't feel it. I said, that's what I want you to remember. It's a commandment of Allah. Now I have to be realistic because I know her mother, my wife, started in college. Because you see pictures, right? I know my mother-in-law started 7 years ago. I know my auntie so-and-so had this one. I might know my sister she might know her pupu started in high school. At junior year. So everyone knows their storyline. I have to make sure and say, look, there are some fundamentals, salah, boys and girl dating, all this stuff. We want you to like boys, but here's the limits, right? Right? I would have those conversations. Sorry, I'm just kind of...
No, you're good, you're good.
It's like, right? But those are things you're going to have, right? Allah protect, and I ask you to make dua for my kids. Allah's going to protect them, because we have our mistakes, and there are some... But that opportunity to say that, right? And say, okay, that time's going to come, but I want you to realize. And that it's better to have that than kind of have, like, I'm doing this because I'm scared Bob's going to get mad, to say, all right, where are we with this? And okay, how do we go? And what is going to be okay? What's not going to be okay? And having those developments and moving forward are things. But like something like salah and other factors, I'm like, there's no room for like, when I feel like it kind of salah moments, right? Right? But because we know shaitan's going to say, don't, even if you're not feeling your khushu and salah, it's okay. Bob at this age still has their problems, right? We all have that, and being honest that we all struggle in these kind of things too.
Yeah, I think it's a fair point, and I think if you want to decide, you have 4 kids, and you're trying to decide where am I going to input the energy, like where am I going to input more energy in one kid and less on the other. I think it's a great point that this was brought up. This question, whoever wrote this question, mashallah, is that because at 12, 13 now the hormonal changes start to occur. Right? For young ladies, we know that there's the beginning of the cycle and the estrogen levels. And by the way, these estrogen levels and the premenstrual, by the way, you should be aware of that, right? That when these cycles start to develop, that there is going to be mood changes. There is going to be irritability. There is going to be premenstrually, before the cycle starts, there's going to be a change in their demeanor, the way they talk to you. So I think that one of the take-home points from this discussion here is that from around 11 to 12, up to like maybe 13, 14, 15, you really want to, if you have a choice between where you're going to expend your energy on your middle schooler, right? Middle school to early high school. For many reasons. Biologically, it makes sense, and then also from a standpoint psychologically. So for the boys as well, they start to develop into puberty in the stages, and they start to experience different feelings and different desires. Again, that's a great time. If you're going to diversify your portfolio, figure out where you put the money, you want to invest in that time, especially around 11. And if you can start there, inshallah, your middle school experience will be a lot better.
Inshallah. I still want to hear why your dad didn't trust you.
Yeah, we'll get there.
We'll get there. Okay. Seems like you're dodging the question now. All right. Okay. So, Dr. Jawad, there's some questions that are, I think, directed towards you in regards to mental illness and the perception and the stats based on opinions are generally biased. Also, survey of youth may be biased towards their perception of something with their level of maturity, etc. they feel depressed because of not getting a like. Another question, or another comment, I guess, and maybe you can expound on this, is a little bit of a lot of times we talk about mental health with our children when, as parents, we are struggling ourselves, or as we have our own challenges and our own battles, and sometimes because of that, it's hard for us to, help that situation because we ourselves are struggling. So, what are some tips and advice that you have there?
So first of all, to get back to the statistics, I think one thing I will say is that honestly, if we started to delve into, mashallah, Dr. Jawad in Stanford is doing a lot of good work. We're starting to get data in the Muslim community, and whatever we do get back, it's not like this notion that alhamdulillah, we are Muslim and we have a good khandan, so we're good, right? Like mental illness doesn't care whether you have a good khandan. Right? Biologically, you're genetically predisposed to an illness. It doesn't matter whether you're Bihari or not. As much as my mom loves Biharis, try. But the point is, it doesn't matter where you're from. It doesn't matter what tribe you're from. It doesn't matter what religion you practice. Right? Allah SWT has designed human beings to experience mental illness. Some of them are through genetic predispositions. Some of them are from environment, and some of them is both, right? Nature and nurture. So statistically, I actually feel that they underestimate, in my opinion. I think these numbers are actually underestimated. So I think it's more prevalent than we think it is. A lot of that has to do with social media and what the kids are going through and what they're seeing, right? Because if you're a young lady and all you look through when you look through social media is that, the Instagram influencers, of whom 95% use Facetune, right? Facetune is a way to modify your face after you've taken a picture. 95% of Instagram influencers use Facetune. So what does that tell you? Social media is fake. And what happens with our young ladies is that they're seeing these things on social media, they swipe up and they say, I'll never look as good as this. Or for a young male, same thing. I'm never going to look as good as this. So they're contending with a beast, a monster that we still don't know the downstream effects of. So mental illness is, the statistics are backed up, and I think that's actually more prevalent. The second question about if you yourself are struggling. This is the problem I see in my area, right? That okay, we might even get as far as acknowledging that I have a depression, I have anxiety as a parent. You might get that far. You might even get as far as saying, okay, my son has depression, anxiety. By the way, I can diagnose someone with anxiety simply by the family history. Like if a young 21-year-old walks in and they tell me their mom is struggling with anxiety, he's on meds, or their dad was struggling with anxiety, and that's it. It's like genetically, it's almost like guaranteed that they're also going to struggle. So this happens. It's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's decree. It's a test, and inshallah, we pass that test, and we show patience and sabr, then inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward us. But the problem I see is that we don't get help. Because I told you that statistic earlier, that 27% of people who are severely depressed are getting help. So can you imagine the parent, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help and this parent overcome their illness, that wrote this question, say, I mean. Like, they need to be getting help, their daughter needs to be getting help, or son, whoever it is, and how do we get that help, right? Look, you don't have to see a Muslim therapist. Khalil Center is booked for 9 years. Okay? Okay? I can talk to Human and he will just be stressed out. Like, but Human, man, I got more for you. Right? It's not possible to go there. And I've done mashwar with the Mashaykh. If you want to disagree with me, we can talk about it afterwards. But you can see a non-Muslim therapist. And you should not worry about seeing a non-Muslim therapist. And you should not have any reservations in seeing a non-Muslim therapist. Cultural sensitivity training is all of them go through that. I'm not saying they're going to understand your mother-in-law drama, Saz Bahu drama, okay? I get it. Like maybe Sandy is not going to understand that, right? But 90% of issues that as Muslims are struggling, the non-Muslims struggling with, the Jewish person struggling with. So psychologytoday.com. Please, whoever wrote this question and whoever's in the gathering here or listening online, psychologytoday.com. You type in your zip code. You will find all the available therapists in the area. You'll see a picture, you'll see a profile. You can decide who you want to see, how old they are, all that kind of stuff. Okay, you may not have many options because it's really saturated now. But see someone. It doesn't have to be a local imam. Because Qari Imam is going to be really busy after this session. Okay, he's getting a lot of phone calls this week, right?
Already am.
You already am. He already is. So at some point, you got to get professional help. I'm not going to get my ankle treated by the local guy in my neighborhood. He was a okay, I'm not dogging homeopathic medicine. But Okay, he's
You
training
just did,
somewhere.
brother. You just did.
I just did.
I'm feeling
Mashallah.
offended here.
No, a lot of good stuff there, mashallah. But the point is, you're going to get professional help. So why are we not getting professional help when we feel down? So psychologytoday.com, please bookmark this. And then if you need to see a psychiatrist, this is my recommendation. If you feel like your illness is getting to the point, or your daughter or son's illness, you're not sure, right? Do I need to see a therapist? Do I need to see a psychiatrist? You know what that means? That means you need to see your pediatrician. That means you need to see your primary care doctor. If it's your kid, take him to the pediatrician. The pediatrician is trained. Then who prescribes the most antidepressants in the United States? It's not the psychiatrist. It's the primary care doctors and the pediatricians. So it's not complicated. Just go to your pediatrician. Take your kid, say, hey, he's not acting. You know why we talked about this earlier? You spend time with your kid every day. You spend 2 minutes with your daughter and son every day. You pick up on a new routine that they have. You're not happy about the new routine. You're worried about it. Don't even think. Just take him to the pediatrician and say, look, he used to sit with these group of friends at lunch. He doesn't anymore. He's not eating as well as he used to. He's not as active as he used to. What can we do? The pediatrician will either A, tell you I need to put him on medication. They will. They'll refer you to a psychiatrist. They'll refer you to a therapist. So that's the gatekeeper. So if you are confused about what to do, start with your primary care doctor. If you're an adult, start with the pediatrician if you're a kid.
We have to conclude now. There's a lot of questions, and I will just, again, a real quick plug before we conclude, though. We are trying to continue this conversation, right? So it's not that we're ending the conversation here, that we're not going to have more sessions. We want to continue. But it's important that we continue, that we are doing our part as parents and learning and understanding and engaging and constantly learning about different techniques. And then we do this at work all the time, right? This professional development all the time at work, where you have to understand the new systems that are being put in place. Why is it as parents, it's one of the most important jobs. It is the most important job, and yet we don't take out time to actually study and learn how to become better parents. So inshallah, here at the Islamic Foundation, in collaboration with Khalil Center and CMMA, we're actually going to be hosting an 8-week course on parenting that is going to be taught by Dr. Fahad Khan of the Khalil Center, inshallah. This is going to start in January 14, and it will be every Saturday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. I know it's early, but it is important that for those of us who are parents, and this is not only for parents who have children that are young, but parents who have children that are teenager and high schooler, and these are important conversation and courses. I want you to take this seriously, inshallah. There is a fee for it. We've sent out an email about it. We will continue to share this flyer, and I'll pull it up on the screens in a moment now. But I want to encourage everybody to do their part, to register for these programs, to participate in these courses. And along with that, the key ingredient to all of this, I would say the most important is dua. I was telling someone the other day, if you truly care about something, but you haven't taken out time to make dua for it, like if you say you care about something, but you haven't woke up at tahajjud and raised your hands in front of Allah and made dua, then it's likely that you don't really care about that issue. It is a key to our success that we raise our hands and we ask Allah, oh Allah, we don't know what we're doing. We're lost, we are incompetent. That's the reality. That's our reality. We got to acknowledge that reality. But oh Allah, I need your help, I need your guidance. Continue to guide me and help me to be a better parent, to be a friend to my children, to be a teacher for them and a mentor for them. Honestly, make this dua every single day. The Prophet ﷺ teaches us through the Quran, رَبَّنَا هَبْ لَنَا مِنْ أَزْوَاجِنَا وَذُرِّيَّاتِنَا قُرَّةَ أَعْيُنٍ. Oh Allah, make my children the coolness of my eyes. And it's not enough for you to make that dua once. It's a long life effort, and it's a battle. It's a challenge. It's something that you'll have ups and downs. You'll have good times. You'll have bad times. But in those good times, you raise your hand and you say, oh Allah, I thank you for this. Because sometimes things will be going well, and you thank Allah, but the next day things will be going difficult, and you ask Allah for help and guidance, inshallah. And so with that, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless us all. I want to thank both Dr. Jawad and Brother Habeeb for being here, although I still want to hear the story of why his father didn't trust him. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to, sorry? Sure.
My name is
So Haji Sahib, mashallah. Jazakallah khairan. Jazakallah khairan. Inshallah. A beautiful point. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you and bless you. I mean, part of the solution is that yes, our kids need to be connected to the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that we should do our part in making sure that we are bringing them, connecting them to Allah, connecting them to the Muslim leaders, inshallah. Haji Sahib, Iqama is in 1 minute though, so I have to. Alhamdulillah, inshallah. Direct all of your issues to me, inshallah. I got you guys, inshallah. May Allah reward you guys and bless you all. No. Inshallah. Jazakallah khairan, barakallah feekum. Inshallah, I ask Allah to reward you all. We have Isha now, the Iqamah that is being given, inshallah, soon. So I encourage everybody to head upstairs, inshallah. Jazakallah khairan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.